Hello.
Hello.
Hear me okay, Jerome?
How you doing, Jay?
Good, good. Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for being interested in this project.
Absolutely. It's great. Um, welcome to
Nice.
the Jazz Real Book.
Okay. Are we doing this live or is this like not live or what is
No, it's pre-recorded, so
okay. Uh is it better if I plug in my headphones or does everything seem fine as is?
you seem really clear to me.
Okay, so maybe we'll do without. I have them on the side if stuff gets starts getting weird.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. You sound nice and clear. Um,
Okay.
give me the proper pronunciation of the last name. I want to make sure I get it right.
Sure. Sabag.
Okay, good.
Sabag. Yeah.
Thanks. I would have got it wrong.
Oh
Close.
well, it's I'm kind of used to whatever people do. I'm not super picky.
Well, listen, man, welcome to the show and congrats on the new record, Stand Up.
Thank
Uh,
you.
excellent record, Analog Tone Factory Records, right?
That,
Is that your label or is that
that is my label. It's a label that I started about a year and a half ago with my partner, pianist and engineer Pete Rendy. And so far, we started putting out records about a year ago. The first record is a trio record of mine called Heart with Joe Martin and Al Foster. And after that, we'd put out a Chris Cheek record with Bill Frisell called Keepers of the Eastern Door. And that
cool?
was a few months ago, and Stand Up is the third one.
Right. So what prompted you to start your own label?
I've been pressing vinyl for about 10 years. And since 2018, I've been recording all analog. I've been recording to tape for a long time, but a lot of my earlier work to tape was put out on CDs because the labels I was working with at the time didn't really believe or want to invest in vinyl. So I kind of chanced upon it about 10 years ago, and it became a blueprint to produce music in the sense that there is a vinyl revival, and by pressing vinyl and especially recording all analog and having the vinyl being cut all analog, like it doesn't go to digital at all, at least since 2018, with me, it hasn't. So that actually allowed me to cultivate a fan base of people who are still willing to buy music and to pay for music, which increasingly in jazz and in other genres is really difficult to achieve. So this became a blueprint to produce new music. And because of that, it made sense to start my own label and try to let people know that this is something we're doing, as opposed to licensing the digital to another label, which is what I was doing, and
Right.
then keeping the rights to the analog. So I was already doing the hard work, which is the vinyl, the analog stuff. It made sense after a while to keep it all in-house and try to let people know we're doing this.
Really cool. Yeah, I've talked about this with several artists on the show. The LP revival and just how I'm all for it, man. It's like nothing sounds like or feels like when you're holding that thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's like a tactile aspect to it. I mean, it's like, and it's also like a mindset thing. Like if you're gonna put on a record, you're physically putting on the record, you're dropping the needle, it's a little more involved of a process, and I think it's more conducive to actual listening as opposed to being on like one of the streaming services where, if you don't like something immediately after 3 minutes, you might decide to like go to the next track or go to the next record. Like if you bought the vinyl and you're putting it on, it's a little more of an emotional investment. So I think you might actually be in a better state for listening, which is what this is all about.
Yeah, totally. It changes your headspace. And if I'm not like mistaken, LPs still have a limitation too in terms of how much material you can fit on it, right?
Yes, like the more material you put on an LP, the softer the cut has to be, so you run into noise floor issues. So basically, you want to be about around the 40-minute mark, which this record is. Like
Mm.
if you go much above 20, 22 minutes aside, then you get into trouble. I've done as much as 22 and was like a really good cutting engineer. Like we're using Bernie Grunman, who is like one of the best in the business. Like not only is he like an audiophile mastering engineer, but he also mastered Thriller and like, Purple Rain and a bunch of hit records. So he's excellent and he knows how to maximize the the space in the groove. So he knows how to make that sound good. But there is a physical limitation. You don't want to have a 30-minute side. That I mean people do it, but like it's you're gonna run into issues.
Mm. Yeah, so I mean, before we get to the music, even just so in terms of production, I mean, I really appreciate the. It sounds like you did like analog tape to it, the half-inch tape, I guess, back like old school used to be, right?
Yeah, this is half-inch tape, so it's actually a live mix,
Right.
uh, to left and right, and half-inch on at 30 IPS is a very high resolution format, but that means your mix is done live. So James Farber is essentially making all the balance choices and also reverb or whatever you might want to use. All these decisions have to be made in real time. After that, the tape gets converted to digital for the digital versions, but it doesn't get converted to digital for the analog versions, which are like the tape copies because we sell those as well, and
Mhm.
the all analog record.
So in this process, is there any possibilities for overdubbing or what you get is what you get?
Essentially, what you get is what you get. There's no room for overdubbing, at
Right.
least not in a live to two-track process. If you were using multi-track tape, possibly you could do that, but that's not what we did here. You can edit if you really want to, but that requires a razor blade and something that takes you 2 minutes in Pro Tools might end up taking you 2 hours with tape.
Right.
So, it's not something that you're going to want to do unless you have a very good reason to do it. So, I also
Mhm.
happen to think it's a good thing because I feel we over edit a lot of music, including in jazz, at this time because it's so easy to do it digitally. So you end up with like these really clean sounding records where like everybody wants to scrub even the hint of a mistake, but
Mhm.
it also, it sucks the life out of it. And I think in general, uh, over processing is results a little bit in or can result in lifeless records. If you listen to the records from the 50s and 60s, they're a lot less edited, they're a lot less messed with.
Mhm.
And it's more about getting the basics right, like putting the mic, picking the right mic, putting it in the right place in front of the right guy who's a band who can play all in the room. And those are still to me a lot of the best sounding records, especially for jazz.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, I'm kind of playing dumb here, but I've recorded both ways, and there is a certain beauty to doing it in this way. And those warts are part of it. Like you should be solid enough in your craft that the hope is, it's going to sound good. But there is
And
also, benefits to having that ability to edit as well, more easily, of course. But
yeah,
um,
absolutely. It also
yeah,
depends what you're doing. If you're doing like a more like composed record, or like a more like pop record, or like I mean, there are tons of valid reasons to want to edit, but like improvised music is not one of them, at least not in my opinion.
yeah. Now, is it hard to find? I remember tapes that analog tapes not as easy to come by anymore either, right? They're pretty expensive, are they not?
They're expensive. There are basically two companies making pro level tape right now. One is in Europe, one is in the US. And fortunately, they're still around. I've heard rumors of a third one maybe
Mm.
starting up again, and there's a couple of other ones in Australia and China, but they don't, to my knowledge, make half-inch tape, which is what we're using for the machine we have. So It's tricky because it's a niche market. There can be quality control issues. It's hard to come by. You gotta buy it in advance. You gotta check it, make sure it's cool. It costs a lot of money. So yeah, it's I understand why people don't want to bother.
Yeah.
In my particular case, I really do think it sounds a lot better, and it also allows me to have an all analog vinyl, which is something people are interested in. So it's a conjunction of I think this sounds better and it's the best way to present the music. And also, there are enough people right now buying LPs so far with my stuff that like I'm able to at least function and keep going, which I couldn't do those records if I stayed in digital. They would
Yeah.
be Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing that I like about the process in a sense is that having to sort of edit yourself to that 40-minute sort of time. It's I'm fortunate enough to get to listen to a lot of music and a lot of people send me things. When I see a record that's an hour and 10 minutes, I get a little nervous. But when I see a project that is a little bit more consolidated, it reminds me of how important it is to program the record properly, make difficult choices at times, and really hopefully present the best of the best.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And in fact, even before I started being involved with like actually pressing vinyl, I'm someone who was gravitating more towards making shorter records. That's kind of what I want to do anyway. So I think it's a good limitation. I think 40 minutes ish, whether it's 38 or 42, like, it's a good ballpark for a statement and an ensemble of compositions. And yeah, I think anything over an hour gets long. As a listener, I think and I also really believe in what you just said, like programming. Like I would like people to sit through this record as a whole thing, and I'm hoping it makes sense for them. And I really spent a lot of time doing the sequencing. I tried like many different versions of it. And what we ended up with to me is like, a very digestible version. And it kind of, I mean, I hope it keeps you on your toes and kind of flows one song into another. And there's contrast, which I really,
Mhm.
as a listener. So I hope people enjoy it. But yeah, I think 40 minutes is a good length. Like I don't I mean I admire the people who can do like a double CD or a triple CD, and I know some of them, and some of those are amazing, but it's like it's a lot of music.
Yeah, no, totally. And especially if you're expecting people or your hope is to have them sit down for the entire record. And 40 minutes is not a lot to ask of somebody, and especially, and like you mentioned, we're going to get to the tunes. There is a great amount of variety. It does work as a cohesive project. I think and I actually really noticed the programming. In fact, like the one song Mosh Pit, I was like, like that must have been a weird uh wrapping your head, because it's so different from the rest of it. Where do I put this piece? Like,
Right.
yeah. So, talk about first, if you can. I've had Nishit on the show before, but if you
Mhm.
could talk about the band and how you guys all sort of know each other and came together.
Sure. So this is Ben Mono on guitar, Joe Martin on bass, Nasheed Waits on drums. Essentially, it's a slightly different version with a different drummer of a band that I've had for 20 years with Ben and Joe. We started playing in, I think, 2003. Our
Mhm.
first record, North, is in 2004. Then we did another record called Pogo in 2007, and then The Turn in 2014, which incidentally is the first record that was pressed onto vinyl and which was kind of the start of what became Analog Tone Factory today. So this band has been my main kind of outlet for my music, at least in terms of writing music. And that was a very kind of definite decision on my part at the time to seek out these guys and decide that I was going to have a band and I was going to write music. And those were the people I wanted to do it with. Like I played with different people. It was Ted Poor on drums at the time on the three first records. We played a lot. These guys brought a lot to my music. We did a bunch of tours. We played regularly in New York. I'm a big believer in having the same personnel in a band and trying to keep a band for a long time. Ted ended up moving to Seattle not long after we did the turn. And so since then, we just kept playing and I kept, calling different drummers and being in New York, like one of the great pluses of living in New York is that, you have access to a lot of great musicians and, probably certainly actually the best drummers in the world. So, we were fortunate enough to play with Nasheed and play with Jonathan Blake and play with other people who were all great. And I thought it clicked particularly well with Nasheed, whose playing I'm really a fan of and have been for a long time. So I asked him if he would be down to do this record and, really play with us on a regular basis, and he was. So yeah, that was a real treat. And getting his energy and his outlook and his creativity and his involvement with everything was a real asset for this record and is a real asset for this band. He really brings something different to it. So I'm
Yeah.
very happy with the current incarnation of this. And yeah, like so individually, Ben is one of the great guitarists of today. He's someone who has his own sound. He's also a great accompanist, especially the kind of rock tunes I really write with him in mind.
Hmm.
He has a wide sonic palette. Like he can play with a clean sound, he can play with a distorted sound. He has an incredible grasp of harmony, and he basically pretty much instantly gets what my songs are about. Like, I think the stuff we end up playing in my band is maybe simpler than certainly his music or and maybe other music than he's like involved with. And I think, he appreciates that too, like being able to like have a one chart thing that might have a couple of challenging things, but like not something that's like super intricate and like would take, hours and days of days to kind of get it. Like my music tends to be like fairly readable, like and not that far off a regular jazz chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love playing with Ben. We really, I think we're a good complement for each other. Nasheed, we kind of talked about. Joe is my favorite bass player and somebody who's been basically on pretty much all my projects for the last 20 years. And he's so versatile and he's so good. Like he can do anything. Like you can play a standards gig, you can play an original music gig, you can play free, you can play inside, and he'll always be everything he does is in the service of the band, like trying to make things sound better, making sure he hooks up with a drummer, making sure everything he does is supportive. So even though he's a great soloist, he's also somebody who's fairly egoless and as a bass player and is really there to kind of serve the music and make everybody sound good. And I think that's a really good quality for any musician, really. I mean, I strive to do the same thing playing saxophone, but especially for a bass player, I think that's really important.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, I mean, having talked to Nasheed, he seems like, super easy to work with. At least my impression for the hour I spent with him or whatever. But yeah, and that instrumentation of saxophone and guitar, I could think of, a handful of records, but it's not the most common.
Mm.
Um, and I think it really works well. And Ben Monder, is just such a unique voice, so individualistic. So it sounds to me like when you present these tunes, you have his voice in mind as well as the rest of the group.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of this stuff is written specifically with these guys in mind and Ben in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, very
And
cool.
go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. Did you have something else to add? I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, like guitar and saxophone, that's something that's been really important to me, like, as like a teenager, like seeing Lovano and Schofield was really
Hmm.
important to me. I remember seeing them with Dennis Irwin and Bill Stewart in Paris. And also I think like like a sonic pairing like Mark Turner and Kurt Rosenwinkel. That was also important in my development, like hearing them in Smalls every week, which I did when I moved to New York, late 90s or mid 90s actually. And back to Jim Hall and Sonny Rollins. So that's a sound I've always gravitated to, and I kind of knew when I started writing music that I wanted it to be mostly with guitar and as opposed to piano.
Yeah, yeah, and the music lends itself really nice to it. I mean, obviously, you can see I have all these guitars, and well, bass is my main instrument. But yeah, there's also as a bass player, there's a certain way you play differently with the guitar, just to really because they can have a clash at times. Um, yeah, it gives it a little bit more of an openness in a sense. Although obviously there are some great piano players who can play in an open sound and but yeah, it works great. And then like tell me if you could about the name of the record, Stand Up.
So it's a little bit of a double thing. Like Stand Up is actually also the name of a song, and it's a song that's actually not on the record, but it's a song that we play in this quartet, and it's a song that's on one of the previous records called Pogo. And we recorded this the day after the election. And the we're in the music, but like everybody's mind was also on like what's going on politically in this country, and like it felt, it was both like an allusion to the political situation and the fact that like, we might be in a situation where, things are not normal. We might have to speak up and you know, um, like protest and make ourselves heard. At least those of us who are opposed to what's going on, which, I'm one of them. So, and then there was also the kind of greater idea of be yourself artistically and do what you believe in. As I'm getting older, like that's something that's maybe even more important than it used to be. Like, the world is evolving, the music is evolving, everything is changing. Like, what do we really believe in? What do I really believe in as an artist, as a person, as someone living in the US, who is an immigrant? Like, I came from France. I came to go to Berklee College of Music. I was a student, then I was on a work visa, then on a residency permit, and then I became a citizen, quite a while ago now. But like what it is that I believe in, politically, artistically, personally. So I think that's what I was trying to get at with this title.
Yeah, really cool. And then I really like the artwork on how did that come to be?
So the artwork is by an Italian photographer who lives in New York. His name is Michele Palazzo. We had worked together on a previous record of mine, Heart, which was the first record on Analog Tone Factory. I kind of chanced upon his work on Instagram of all places. Somebody introduced me to his work, and I reached out and I was like, I really like your pictures. Could I use a picture of yours for an album cover? Can we work this out? He was into it. So we did Heart. And then I kept, tabs on him, and I asked him to do this one, and he
Mm.
sent me a bunch of things. And I picked the pictures that are on the front and back. So yeah, so this is the record actually. So I don't know if people can see. Yeah,
Oh
that
yeah, yeah, they'll see it.
and the back. Actually, I gotta pull out the record so we can see it. But it looks like this. So those are both.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, I really like his work. I think having artwork that's like striking and makes a statement is important. Also, as far as like the label, I think having a graphic identity is important. Like if you look at like, the great models, labels of the past or of the present, like you look at Blue Note, you look at Prestige, you look at ECM, like they
Mm.
all have a coherent look to what they're doing. So what we're doing here is like, every record is has this square here and in the back where there's the band picture, and then there's like the liner note, the credits and stuff, and they all had kind of have this look, but with like different artwork, like
Mm,
different pictures. Some of them are like My Record Vintage, which still uses this blueprint, even though it's nominally on Sunnyside. It has a black and white picture. Heart has like a very kind of colorful picture from Michele, but like in a different way. The Chris Cheek record, Keepers of the Eastern Door, has a vintage picture also. So it's kind of like different looks with the pictures, but similar graphic identity in a way.
yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have the LP yet because they sent me a digital copy. But yeah, it's like between the artwork and the name of the record. Even have if you didn't know anything about your music, it makes you want. To me, it makes me want to check it out.
Good.
I mean, I
Good.
want to check it out because I know of your music and the other band members. But if I was digging through a record bin, that one would strike me for sure. So it's definitely I think you've made a good artistic choice for sure on that. So let's actually now talk about the music, which is the most important. Because all this stuff doesn't mean anything if the music's not strong, which it is. It's very strong, and I really enjoyed it. One track I want to ask you about is the opening track, Lone Jack. It's kind of got this blend of soul and maybe a little bit of country elements. It really sets a cool tone. Talk about that song and why you put it as the first track as well.
Sure. So this is something I wrote specifically thinking of Ray Charles, and specifically thinking of his modern sounds and country records. Like there's volume one and volume two. I am a big, Ray Charles fan. I love his work in general. I love his singing. You know, those records were pretty seminal at the time as, blending like a soul thing and a country thing. And I think also made the point that it was like one music and those things were like intermingled as they were. But so also just Ray Charles phrasing on the piano when he plays piano, the way the way he sings, like that's a big inspiration. So like the melody kind of came to me and I could kind of hear him sing something like that. So that's why it's dedicated to him. The country influence in the title, Lone Jack is a place in Missouri, which I went through because my label partner, Pete Rendy, who works with me on Analog Tone Factory and who's a great pianist and great engineer, that's where he grew up. I think Pat Metheny also grew up around here. And in fact, when I titled this tune, I forgot that Metheny has a song by
Yeah,
the
yeah.
name. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe this wasn't the best thing to do. But it kind of slipped my mind for a minute. And yeah, so yeah, it was like and it's exactly like you said, it was like a soul, like country thing to that. I felt it was a good opener for the record. It was a kind of like a different opener because usually you kind of go in with maybe something more active and that like kind of like hits you in the face a little more. And this was not that. It was like the more kind of let's kind of have a vibe uh track, and
Yeah.
start the album. But especially the way it turned out was like Ben's playing and the way Nasheed plays the backbeat. Like I thought there was something like really inviting about it and really that kind of drew me in. And so I felt it was a good opener.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. And it's like it's very accessible. Like even if you were not necessarily a jazz aficionado, I think you could listen to that piece and get, and appreciate it. Which is something I'm very, as a professor at teaching jazz history courses and such, I'm always aware of what somebody who's listening to jazz or new to jazz might be able to absorb.
Mhm.
And I think even though there's a level of sophistication to it, it's an accessible tune that I think translates well. So a great choice there. And another song kind of that has this backbeat to it at times. One of my favorite tracks on the record is the break song.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
yeah, and it seems to be kind of built around at least the melody, almost this two-note theme, and that kind of ventures off. Can you talk about that song and the process of writing it and such?
Sure. That one is dedicated to Stevie Wonder, although it's a little bit of a different thing because I didn't specifically think of him when I was writing it. I thought of him after the fact. Because it's almost like a pop song, and in fact, sometimes we play it as a straight up pop song and we don't improvise on it. On the record, we do improvise on one of the sections, and then we go back to like a little part of the head. Sometimes we actually kind of use it as a theme song or a break song, hence the title, where we play it at the end of a set and we play like a 2 minute version. And it's like a straight up kind of pop song kind of groove thing, and we don't actually improvise on it. But yeah, I guess this one just kind of came to me, and it kind of had this happy, backbeaty feeling, and it reminded me in that way of like certain qualities that I associate with like Stevie Wonder's work, particularly in the 70s when he did like this incredible string of like, seminal albums, Songs in the Key of Life and, Inner Visions and all that. Um, but yeah, it was kind of like I guess I was trying to write something. I think I just heard a melody and kind of went from there, and then kind of figured out what else I wanted in the tune. But like I didn't really set out, I guess, to write something quite like that. It just kind of happens. Like I'm not always a very I'm usually not a planned writer. Like it's rare that I set out to write something in a particular way. Sometimes I do, but like usually I sit down at the piano or maybe just with pen and paper and I just try to sing a song and then figure out what the melody wants, what are the chords, and what else needs to be in the song. So I'm a pretty like intuitive writer, I guess. Like I don't really have like composing techniques. I went to Berkeley and like, I did learn a bunch of stuff, but not specifically about composing. Like in terms of writing music, I'm mostly self-taught. I'm
Yeah.
actually pretty much entirely self-taught for that.
Hmm. So what years were you at Berkeley?
93 to 95. I spent 2 years, and that was a great time in my life. Like it was really productive. It was the first time where I was able to focus exclusively on music, which I really needed to do. When I came to this country in 93, I wasn't a very good player. I learned a lot at Berkeley, and I learned a lot in my first years in New York. It was the first time in my life where I was able to really work on music full time like I wanted to be, and I very much needed to do that. And I also met a lot of people, uh, peers who became friends and longtime musical associates, like guitarist Greg Tui, who I still play with today, bassist Matt Penman, Pete Randy, my partner in Analog Tone Factory. Plenty of other people that I still work with or am friends with. I also had some great teachers. The late Joe Viola was a fantastic saxophone teacher. Wasn't really a jazz player, but he was a saxophone guru, and I learned a lot from him about playing the saxophone, about sound production, particularly. Billy Pierce, George Garzone, Hal Crook, Ed Tomasi. There were a lot of people who I really learned a lot from.
Yeah, I'm only smiling because you and I were there at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So all
Okay.
these names you're mentioning are bringing up memory.
All these people. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was there from 90 to 94. I'm sure we probably crossed paths at some point, but yeah, I mean, the names that you're mentioning, Tomasi, I mean, that guy's mind is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I took his course and I'm still, every once in a while, I pull out that notebook and I'm just like, it was just so much. I just remember writing incessantly, because he had so many advanced techniques. Garzone used to sit in on some gigs I was on, which was really cool. So yeah, and Billy Pierce taught my wife. So yeah, it's funny that you mentioned, but that was a good time to be there. And I think you touched upon a certain thing where like in regards to music school, a lot of the benefit of a place like Berkeley, at least then, was the classes, of course, and the private instructors, but the people you connect with who become lifelong partners, that you would have not met probably had you not been there. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that was half the benefit of going there. As great as all these teachers were, and I also, I should also mention Herb Pomeroy, who was like an incredible teacher and writer who I also got a chance to study with. I mean, it was a good time also in terms of faculty, in terms of student body. Uh, a lot of people were still going there specifically to play jazz. So, I don't know if you did that, but like I was certainly playing. I was practicing all day, going to classes, and then
Yeah.
I was playing sessions every night until really late. Like back in those days, I don't know if it's still the case now, but it's like the rooms that were above the dorms or whatever they were called, like you had these open rooms with like piano and drums and a bass amp and a guitar amp, and you could just reserve them or maybe even walk in and play. And they were open like late at night, like on weekends. I would think they were open until like 4 a.m. or something like that. So it's like we took advantage of that. Like we played a lot and certainly learned a lot just from doing that. Like I learned a lot of tunes. I uh try to play by ear as much as I could. My ears got better. Like definitely my knowledge of repertoire got better. It was like full-time music, full on all the time. And there's a time in your life where it's really beneficial to do that as a musician for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was like exactly as you described. It was classes during the day, jam sessions till late in the morning. Then you get a couple studio things that you could do. Uh, and of course, the city's cool too. I mean, there's great music. You go check out the teachers. Yeah, that's cool, man. To bring it back to bring it back to the record, if I could. One other song, there's more than one, but I want to talk about Mosh Pit. And I think I'm not sure. Is every song a tribute to an artist or
Yeah, some of them were after the fact, and some of them I really liked. The first one, Lone Jack, I was really thinking of the artist when I wrote it. When I decided I was gonna do that with the record, I had enough songs that I had a clear picture of with specific people that I figured that I'd do it for the whole record, and I'd have a dedication for all the songs. So yeah, all the songs are nominally are dedicated to someone or in a couple or a couple of people.
okay? So this one dedicated to Trent Reznor.
Yeah.
Nine Inch Nails, right? Talk about this tune because it's definitely different from anything else on the record, and I think appropriately titled. That title couldn't be anything mellow, you know. So, so talk about this track if you could.
Like I have a pretty wide variety of things I like in music and specific, but also specifically in jazz music. So it's like I love playing free, and I've listened to a lot of completely improvised music, whether American or European, and I've been involved in some of it. So that's also something Ben does quite a bit. And we have a record that we made in I think 2010, where we played trio with French Swiss drummer Daniel Humer, who's like an legend over there, and who's 86 years old, 87 years old now. So we made this completely free record that I wrote some sketches of music for them, but essentially it was like a free music record, and we've been doing that over the years. We also play trio with Paul Motion, Ben and I. Some of that was improvised and some of that was based on tunes, but it was definitely a more open vibe. So I love playing like that, and I wanted to have a song like that on the record. So I wrote this kind of like short, no harmony, aggressive kind of melody that specifically called for distortion. Like I knew I wanted that sound, and it was kind of like almost like a fast rubato kind of thing. And then we just kind of open up on it. And to me, it's not that different. I mean, it is very different stylistically than the rest of the record, and I played up and maximized that contrast in the sequencing because Mosh Pit comes right after High Falls, which is like a much gentler Brazilian inspired bossa nova tune. So
Yeah.
I played up that contrast because I thought it was a cool effect and a cool thing to do. But I guess my the way I improvise and the way I think of music, the process isn't that different for me when I play a standard or if I play free. Like it's still all about sound and listening and melodies. So even though the context might be completely different, and I think, yes, it's a tune that stands out on this record because it is very different stylistically from the rest of the record, as you mentioned. But as far as us playing it, maybe it's a thing I have. I'm not really sure, but it doesn't feel that different to me. It's just like I like playing in different ways. Like I like hearing music in different ways. Like I like hearing people who play super straight ahead, and I like hearing people who play completely free. Like as long as I feel they're connecting to what they're doing, and as long as it like touches me, I'm not after a style, either as a listener or as a player. I'm more after like having a voice, being emotionally connected to the material, and it's something I strive for as a musician, and it's also something I appreciate when I listen to other people.
Yeah, yeah, and it translates for sure. And I think it's very common of people. You and I are probably close to the same age. Um, you know, a lot of great influences that we have, and why relegate yourself to a one specific style? You know,
Yeah.
and
So like the people I admire the most, I think sometimes are the people who have their own voice and they feel very personal, but they're also able to function in a lot of different styles, so to speak, or play with a lot of different people, you know. So that's something that I admire and that I'm drawn to.
yeah, and then immediately following that song is Vanguard, which I can only assume is had Paul Motion in mind, right?
Absolutely. This one is like the first song. This one I definitely wrote it for Paul, thinking of Paul's music, and thinking of playing with him and Ben at the Vanguard, which we did for a week in 2011. So that one was really like written with his sound and his music in mind. And he was a very influential, magical drummer and musician. And I think as a writer, I think he's actually underrated.
Hmm.
Uh, I think he's a fantastic composer. And I got to play some of his music with him, and I listened to a lot of these records, hearing Lovano Frizzell and Motion, especially at the Vanguard, which I did many times. I mean, that was like a very seminal experience for me. It was always great, and yeah, that remains some of the best music I've heard to this day.
Yeah, yeah. And so you worked with him briefly, right? Or
Yes.
yeah. What was the circumstances? How did you get to know him? And what was he like on a personal level?
Circumstances were Ben and I had done this record with Daniel Lumiere that I mentioned a little while back, and we wanted, it was getting released here. Danielle wasn't gonna fly over, so I called Ben and I was like, "Who do we get on drums for this?" And I had a list of drummers, and Paul Motion wasn't on it just because I had never played with him, and I didn't think it was like possible.
Right.
This is so. Ben actually suggested Paul, and I was like, "Why don't you call him up? I'm on the gig, so he might do it." Paul didn't know who I was, but Ben played a lot with Paul, so figured it was worth a shot. So I soldiered up and got his phone number from Ben and started leaving a rambling message on his answering machine. And then he picked up and we talked for a minute and he took the gig. So we did a gig at this venue that is no longer in activity called Cornelia Street Cafe in New York.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Gig. And then he liked it. And what happened, and this was a very lucky kind of circumstance, is that he was playing the Vanguard quite often. He had a good relationship with Lorraine Gordon, who was, you know, running the Vanguard for a very long time, who's also no longer with us. Um, and I think he was playing maybe 6 times a year as a leader or something like that. And I think somebody canceled a week, and Lorraine called Paul and offered him a week. And Paul at the time happened to be talking to John Rogers, who's a photographer, was a good friend of Paul's. And John Rogers, who wasn't at my gig, but had dinner with Paul after my gig, remembered Paul saying how much he enjoyed the gig. So when like Lorraine called, John told Paul, "Hey man, why don't you use like Maunder and this guy that you were talking about, which was me, I guess, after that gig." And Paul apparently went, this is according to John, Paul actually went, "Oh yeah, man, that's a great idea. I'm just gonna do that." And that's how we ended up playing the Vanguard with Paul, which, that's one of the times in my life where I had where I was incredibly lucky with circumstances. So yeah, apparently he dug the gig, and this gig this week kind of fell on his lap at the Vanguard, and he called us. He called Ben first, then Ben called me, and then Paul called me, and he was like, "I got to get this. I want to do this. I got to run it by Lorraine, make sure she okays it." And Lorraine Gordon did okay it, and we did the week, and it was great, and that remains one of the best musical experiences I've ever been a part of, for sure. As a person, I mean, I didn't know him that well. I played this week with him, which was 6 days, two sets each day, and then talked to him a few times at the Vanguard for sure, and did the gig before. But like, he was very nice to me, and he was really cool, totally into the music. Um, he was getting sick, so he was a little worried about that. I couldn't tell, and he played incredibly well the whole week. But he passed like 2.5 months later.
Yeah.
Um, he didn't talk much about the music. I asked him some questions about what it was like to play with so and so, but I don't want to go overboard with that because I don't want to be too like fanboy, and like I know he could be mercurial with that kind of stuff, but he was super nice to me for a week, and um seemed happy about the music, at least as far as I could tell. Lots of people came down. It was like fall, like, and then it was Paul, so it's like a lot of people just came to check it out. He also called it his new trio, which was, a little bit of pressure on Ben and I, especially having grown up with those records with Lovano and Frizzell, and loving all these guys playing. Um, but yeah, like Chick Corea came down, Lee Konitz came down. I mean, it was like it was a great experience. And yeah, he didn't say much. He didn't give us instructions. He just played. But the way he played, that was the instructions, essentially. That was kind of like he really led by example. And it's like, one thing that was a takeaway from me was that it was actually really easy to play with him, which is not something I would have thought from the outside. Like, listening to him play, I loved it, but it was a little daunting somehow in terms of like, okay, what's going on here? I love this, but I don't necessarily completely understand it. And I'm not sure I could deal with it. Before I played with him, I was like, well, can I even play with Paul Motion? Like, is this even a good idea for me to do that? So I was encouraged to do that by Ben, frankly, and then it worked out. But once we were playing, it was actually very clear and very easy to play with him because the intent was incredibly clear and the musical direction was incredibly clear. And he was such a great listener and shaper of music. It's definitely some of the highest level listening and music I've ever been a part of, for sure. Like the intensity of his listening and the organic quality of everything he did, and the kind of magical play the right stuff at the right time factor it was just off the hook with him. It was like always the right thing,
Yeah.
at every moment. You know.
That's interesting. Yeah, I often kind of fantasize what it would be like to play with him because he has such a unique, you know, vision about how the music goes, at least it sounds like, and such a unique, just everything about him is, specifically him, and I wonder what that would have been like because I would imagine you would have to be constantly actively listening in order to make that work, and maybe
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it. That's cool. That's a great experience, man. And then, I mean, of course, you've been around some great names, Kenny Barron. You mentioned Jonathan Blake, just many. But I wanted to get a sense of your upbringing a little bit. So you were born in Paris?
I was born in Paris to a Lebanese father and a Canadian mother, and they met in Paris as students and then decided to stay there. So my brother, my sister, and I were born there. And yeah, I grew up there until I was, almost 20 years old. And then I moved to Boston to go to Berkeley. And then I moved to New York. So now at this point, I've spent more time in the US than I have in Paris. But yeah, I grew up there.
Yeah. So when did music sort of enter your life? Were your parents musicians?
Nope. There weren't musicians. There was a lot of music around the house, but it was mostly classical music. My dad is a great, classical music fan. He knows a lot about classical music. So we grew up listening to it. Once in a while, my mom would play like, singer-songwriters and things like that, like French singers,
Sure.
something like Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan, people like that, Leonard Cohen. But 90% of the music we heard as kids was classical music. So I discovered jazz in my local middle school. When I was like 12 or 13, I had this incredible music teacher who played Mozart, Jimi Hendrix, and Miles Davis on the first class.
Not
Uh,
bad.
I was that was that, like, a light bulb went off and I and I was like, oh, okay, So yeah, that's how I got interested in jazz.
Yeah. And what about the playing sax? When did you pick up the sax?
A couple of years later, there was a band in that school and somebody was playing saxophone and I liked the sound of it, so like I pestered my parents until they got me one and I started taking lessons. But it was all related to being in that school, which was also an incredible stroke of luck because it's very common in the US to have bands in schools, but that's something that the US has, which is great, but like France doesn't have. Usually you don't have a band in a regular school. So in this school, there happened to be one because of that teacher. And so a whole generation of people who became musicians, like people older than myself and also younger than myself, actually became professional musicians going through that school because of that one teacher. And some of them became film composers, jazz musicians, rock musicians, classical musicians. There's that it runs the whole gamut. But she was a very influential, teacher, and we're still in touch. I'm going to see her in December, so yeah,
Wow.
we're lucky there.
Yeah, it seems like she had a big impact. Did you want to mention her name?
Yeah, her name is Annick Chartreux. She's also a great pianist and composer in her own right. She wrote some piano methods that are, that people in France really, really like. She, writes, she wrote like contemporary classical music. And yeah, she's great. She's a very influential person for me.
Excellent. So when it came to saxophone influences, who were some of them?
Well, I have a lot, but early important ones, which I think really stayed with me. Dexter Gordon, Stan Getz, John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, Michael Brecker.
Mm.
Uh, and then later on, I really got into, a lot of other people like Lester Young, Lucky Thompson, um, Joe Henderson a lot, um, Wayne Shorter later. But
Mm.
so I like a lot of different people. Dave Liebman was somebody who was really influential for me. So it's like I like a lot of different people. I don't necessarily end up sounding like some of the people who actually are influences. I think I end up sounding like some of them, or at least parts, I take bits and pieces from different people. But I have a very wide appreciation for what the tenor saxophone in particular can do because you can have a spread that goes from Lester Young to Jan Garbarek and like I like a lot of different sounds and I like a lot of different music on the tenor even though I try to have my own voice and my own aesthetic.
Yeah, some things that resonated for me when I was listening to your playing, and I try to imagine who the influences would be, and some of the ones you mentioned, I can kind of hear, but beautiful tone, and uh, and you mentioned this earlier, a thought like phrasing, and it seems like your ideas are very clear, and I like how you use space to sort of get from one phrase to another very often. Is that something that you consciously try to do, or is it just part of your musical personality?
Both. I'm glad to hear you say that because it is a goal of mine. It is something that I strive to do. Now, I don't necessarily strive to do it when I'm playing and when I'm recording and when I'm improvising, but I work on it a lot and I try to pace myself and I try to hear everything I do and I try to leave um, space. And so I have worked on all these things and I do work on all these things a lot. So I'm glad that's coming through. Uh, and I think clarity of ideas was a goal of mine for a long time because for a while I felt my ideas, were not very clear. That's something that I really worked on and try to develop. As far as phrasing, I think one thing that's also important for me is that I think I am as influenced by singers and people who play other instruments than I am by saxophone players.
Mm.
So, like I mentioned Ray Charles earlier, but also like Billie Holiday or Miles Davis or Keith Jarrett or it's I am as influenced by those people as I am by Sonny Rollins or Stan Getz, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's a really big part of where of how I try to play.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that concept, a part of this podcast, in addition to the interviews, is I take a jazz standard and break it down and break down a recording from each, a signature recording. And one thing I talk about quite a bit, and this comes from a little bit of the Berkeley training, Hal Crook's book. I think you mentioned Hal Crook. That
Mhm.
idea of playing and resting, and
Yeah,
uh, not trying to do everything all at once,
yeah.
which is very. It takes a lot of control because when you have an instrument in your hand, you want to play it, and I think that comes with age and experience as well.
Yeah. I mean that is true. That's the first thing he talks about in his book. And it's when I took those classes and yeah, that was an there was a lot of good information in Hal Crook's class. But this particular thing, which was the starting point, was, seminal, like so simple and so profound and so right. Yeah, like, or, as Miles used to say, like to train, like take the horn out of your mouth. Like, play, don't play, or like, in the words of Hall Crook, rest, play, rest, play, rest. So it's something I still think about. It's something I still use when I teach. Like it's usually the first thing I'll say pretty much to any student because it is such a universal truth with jazz students that usually, even when they sound good, they'll come in and they'll just play a bunch of stuff. And just the mere act of being, hey, play something, make it a recognizable idea, then rest and wait until the start of the next idea and wait until you can identify a next the beginning of of a next idea to play, which is what I tell my students now. Like it has such a profound effect on anybody's playing, whether they're really advanced or whether they're actually not so advanced, but it makes everything count that much more. And I think it makes the music more intelligible and it kind of takes you out of that like just string of like I play jazz and this is what I can play and here is my eighth notes and whatever. And like none of that really sounds that good. So it's like if we can kind of all and I try to hold myself to that, like play ideas and then figure out what the next idea is. I think it makes the music we play better, more legible, more effective. It gives time to the rhythm section to figure out what they want to play. It makes the chance of a conversation more likely to happen, and then other things can happen that are unexpected, which is one of the great beauties of this music. It just makes everything better, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I think also in your ensemble playing, like the record, this one, and I've heard some of the others as well, similarly, like if you told me this was a record by any one of the other artists, um, for example, it doesn't sound like to me like this is a saxophone record. You know what I mean? It's like you play the saxophone and you're part of this conversation. Um, and I think it's admirable because it shows a cohesiveness with the band.
Thank you. I mean, I really believe in that. I'd rather be part of the band and have the band sound good and have everybody sound good and have the band be an identifiable thing as opposed to um, just being a saxophone player who's playing on top of the band, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, as a rhythm section player, and I've had these situations. It's somewhat frustrating when you do come across a musician who could be a very talented musician, but they're so definitive in their way of like, no, you're here to back me up and just keep the quarter note and just do the thing. Don't really have a musical personality. But here you can hear the personality of Ben, Joe, Nasheed, and yourself. So it's really cool. All right, so you make it to you're playing jazz were you playing a lot in Paris before you came to Berkeley in a jazz context?
I mean, I was trying to, but I was still a student. I couldn't devote myself to music full time. Uh, you know, it wasn't easy for me growing up the way I did to really commit to music because my parents really didn't want me, especially my dad really didn't want me to do this, and fought pretty hard for me not to. So it was a struggle until I finally was able to come to the US and kind of have a clean slate and be able to just work on music like I needed to try to get better and learn how to play. So I was playing as much as I could, and some of these early influences and experiences were really useful. But I just didn't have the enough time to put in the work, and at some point you just gotta put in the work and figure out how to develop good time and how to learn tunes and how to uh, master your instrument as best you can, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it was useful to kind of break off and branch out and be even in a different country for me to do this, you know.
Sure. And your English was good at that point already when you came here, or
Not as good as now, but good enough. Definitely good enough to function. So yeah, it was fine.
cool. So and then you make the natural transition to New York. I think was it Brooklyn for you?
Brooklyn right away. Yeah. I actually, the place I live in is the place I moved into in 1995.
Oh wow.
So I've been in the same place for 30 years. So yeah, I you got lucky there too. I called everybody I knew in New York. I visited this apartment, uh, and the person who had it wasn't moving, but we had coffee or something, and then a week later they got called to play um, a gig, I think, in Hong Kong for 6 months. And so they took the gig, went to play this gig in Hong Kong, and gave the place up. And that's how I ended up getting this apartment. And then I had a roommate, and the roommate who was on the lease ended up leaving a couple of years later because he wanted to live in Manhattan. So then I inherited the lease, which was a stroke of luck because I was like a jazz student from like a foreign country with not a lot of income, and it would have been hard for me to rent a place outright.
Sure.
And because I had been there for a couple of years and paid the rent, the landlord let me have it. And then I've been here ever since. But that's how I that's how I moved to Brooklyn.
Very cool, man. Yeah, when you find a place that's good in and around the city, you hold on to that for as
Yeah,
long.
it's a
Yeah,
place I can play at. So it's like, like I don't know if yeah, there's people can see there's that's a piano, or you can see the corner of the piano. There's a drum set in another corner. We actually rehearse
yeah,
uh right here in this room. I practice here all the time. So it's like, yeah, I'm lucky that I can make music in this space, and so far nobody's complained.
yeah. That's always a concern, especially when you live in a city. I mean, I'm in New Jersey, so I have the house and the whole thing. But I remember living around cities, and it's not that could be a problem. That could be a real problem.
Mhm. And in Paris, it often is. That's another thing that's very different with New York and Paris. Is like, I don't think I could do this in Paris.
Yeah. You mean just playing at or having enough gigs,
I mean, playing in my apartment,
right,
like,
making
and
noise.
certainly having a rehearsal or a session in my apartment. I think the cops would get called within a matter of like minutes. So.
Yeah, so it sounds like you found something good. Very cool. So what's the next step? Are you touring on this album? Are you playing with the band or what's new for you?
We are. We just played Smalls and we just played Barbayou in Brooklyn. I am actually putting together a tour for March 2026, and I'm still working on it, but it's gonna happen. We're gonna be in Europe March 12th to March 28th. We're going through Germany, near Stuttgart. It looks like we're going to Rome. We're going to Paris. We're going to London. We have Barcelona, a couple of other gigs in Spain, one in Belgium. So I'm still filling in some blanks. I still have like 3 dates or 4 dates that I need to try to cover. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And it's gonna be the full band from the record, Banjo and the Sheet, which wasn't a given because Nasheed is super busy, Joe is busy, Ben is in the Bad Plus, he's busy. There's a lot going on with all these guys. So I'm really looking forward to taking this music on the road. Then in New York, we have a couple of things. We're playing I guess the French Jazz Quarter, which is like a French offshoot of the Winter Jazz Fest early in January. New York, we're gonna play, I guess, Smalls again is what we're doing. And we have some other gigs in town. So yeah, I'm trying to play with this band as much as I can, and I'm trying to basically play as much as I can in New York and elsewhere.
Okay, cool. And as far as teaching goes, are you teaching privately or with an institution or? What's going on
I
there?
teach privately. I don't teach that much, but I have like maybe three regular students,
Mhm.
and at this point are semi-regular, and I have occasional other ones. I do teach when I'm on the road, and like we'll do master classes. Like I have a couple of master classes. I guess it's just gonna be me this time, in Europe in March, and I enjoy doing those. You know. So, and I enjoy teaching privately too, when it's with students who have a reason to be there, which ends up being most of them. So yeah, I've I've had good students lately, so that's been nice.
So to purchase the record and to find out where you're playing, where should people go?
People should go to get the record, analogtonefactory.com, and you can get the all analog vinyl there. There's actually two versions of this record. It gets a little audiophile geeky, but there's something called a one-step pressing, and there's a regular pressing. You can get either. Um, and you can get the CDs. We also do DSD downloads for those who are into that. This particular record isn't up yet, but it will be, and all the other records from the label are. So analogtonefactory.com. And to find out about my activities, jeromesabbagh.com. So JeromeSabbagh.com. And that has my gigs, has some information about the band and stuff. And also, for those of you who are musicians, all my charts are up there for free. So,
Cool.
including the charts from this record. So, all my stuff is on there, and all you have to do is put in your email and you can download whatever you want for free. So,
That's awesome. Very cool. Did I miss anything, Jerome? Did we cover all the things?
oh, that was great. I think you covered it. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage everyone to check out the record, Stand Up. It's a very good record. And I'm sure we'll cross paths somewhere along the line. Maybe we'll play together or whatever. But
I'd love to.
nice talking to you, man.
Thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate it.
All right. Best of luck with everything.
All right. Take care.
Take it easy. Bye now.